here's the deal with logical reasoning. It comes down to 3 core skills. Your ability to know how to read, your ability to make solid inferences, and your ability to destroy arguments. That's it. If you can get good at those 3 things, everything else is secondary. Okay? Now, the challenge with that is that people generally think of themselves as good readers. I can't believe how many times I've heard people say, I did English as my undergrad. I don't understand why I'm struggling with reading comprehension or logical reasoning on the LSAT. Well, reading lots and lots of text is not the same as reading something that's convoluted and precisely decoding what it is saying. Right? Now, these passages in logical reasoning tend to be 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 3 sentences long sometimes. That's it. Right? What actually happens in practice? You have a sentence, you have another one, and you have another one. And then that's it. You're done. Right? Let's say you have a 3-sentence passage. What do most people do? They kind of read it, and they're like, okay, cool. And then it's like they read the question, and they're like, okay, you want me to strengthen what I just read? Okay, I can strengthen it. And then they just start reading the answers, and they're like, okay, yeah, that seems strengthening. And they pick it, right? And a lot of times they get it right, and they're like, sweet. But in reality, when it comes to understanding what you're reading, I want you to read the first sentence and then actually get it. You're like, okay, I see what you're trying to say to me. You're trying to say blah. Then you read the next sentence and you make sure you get that sentence. And if you really get the first sentence and you really get the second sentence, a lot of times the hard work of the LSAT is going to automatically start happening, right? Like, if I said to you, if you go to the store, this is going to be a simple example, but just listen carefully. If you go to the store, then you're going to cry. Right? That's the first sentence you read. You could read that on the LSAT. The LSAT is full of weird shit, right? It's like, where did they come up with that? But anyways, if you go to the store, then you're going to cry. And then the next sentence says, and if you cry, then you're going to lose all your money. Okay, what should you be thinking right then and there? If you go to the store, then you're going to lose all your money, right? Now that's a simple example, but it's the kind of active reading that I want you to be engaged in. You're reading the first sentence, right? Okay, got it. You read the second sentence. Okay, got it. And if there's any sort of connection between the two, put the connection together, right? And then if it's like, therefore, if you lost all your money, you must have gone to the store, what would your reaction be to that last sentence? You're like, no. I just figured it out. If I go to the store, then I'm going to lose all my money. You're now concluding, therefore, if I lost all my money, I must have gone to the store. You just flipped your if and then. That's bad. No, LSAT. Right? And then you're ready to read the question. As opposed to just like reading it and being like, okay, yeah, question. And then you're just kind of reacting to the test. To read and understand, you need to read each sentence, understand what it's saying, and then read the next one, put the two together, and keep going. Now, the conclusion isn't always last. Sometimes there's not even a conclusion. I just want you to understand what you're reading, and that happens on a sentence-by-sentence basis, right? Okay, you know you failed that test if you read an argument and you're like, what? And then you go back and you read it again, right? Like, clearly you weren't stopping and checking in with whether you understood it. Now, some of these sentences are not that nice. It's not like if you go to the store, then you're going to cry. Most of you read that and you get it right away. A lot of these sentences are like, the theory of quantum mechanics, which was initially, investigated by Lapierre, has since been discredited as a faulty science. And you're like, whoa, like, what? Like, huh? Okay, so what are we talking about? We're talking about this theory, which apparently was initially thought about by this other guy, and it's been discredited as faulty. Does that mean it is faulty? I'm just curious. What do you guys think? It has been discredited as faulty. Okay. It's a little ambiguous, right? It's like, okay, it has been discredited. Someone said it's faulty. Is it actually faulty? Might not be. Right? These are the kinds of things that you want to think about. Most people just kind of fly through this. They're like, yeah, theory, okay. In any case, sometimes you need to take that time. Now, people don't feel like they have the time. They're like, I read somewhere that I have 1 minute and 32 seconds for each logical reasoning question. Has anyone read that? You have. What was the time that you read?
Like 1 minute 40, minute 30, minute 45. I might
Yeah. They're like, we'll give you some flexibility. It might be 1 minute 30. It might be 1 minute 45. Like, this is just insanity, right? You don't have that luxury. So I've noticed that some questions take me 30 seconds, right? Like, I'm an LSAT teacher, so I'm like kind of curious. Like, okay, how long did that take? And then some take as long as 2.5, 3 minutes. You just gotta don't worry about that stuff. Just slow down, understand the passage, then read the question and go into the answers. Okay, next thing. Read to understand. That means stop and think about each sentence. Second thing is to make solid inferences. That's what we're going to be working on throughout the entire class. We started that in lesson 1 when we talked about contrapositives. That is a solid inference. In other words, it's true, right? Whereas a false contrapositive is something that's not necessarily true. But people make those mistakes, right? Remember when we did the winning the money at the race example? And your gut reaction is like, oh, well, if you didn't win, you must not have gotten the money. Well, okay, that's possible. I'm not saying that's not true, but it's not necessarily true. So if you made that inference, you just made an inference that's not solid. It's not proven by the evidence. And so some of this is just going to come with time. You got to get better and better at figuring out what must be true given what was said versus what just could be true. Which is a little ironic because I think at this point you realize, what do the games do? They give you rules and they're like, hey, what must be true, could be false, can't be true. LR is just doing the exact same thing. They're just doing it with words. Instead of, well, they're all with words, but less mathy, more like word problems. It's the same thing though. They're just like, here's some stuff, accept it as true, now tell me what must be true on the basis of it. Okay? The last thing is learn how to destroy arguments. This is the one thing you need to keep in mind tonight. An argument has at least 2 pieces. Does anyone know what those 2 pieces are? Yes?
Premise and conclusion.
A premise and a conclusion. What's a premise?
Something that's used to support or make a conclusion.
Yes. And the way you said that is actually perfect. A premise is something that is used to support the conclusion. The reason the way you said that is perfect is that premises are used to support the conclusion, but they often don't. All right? So premises are just pieces of evidence that the author has used to support, really to prove their conclusion. But in most cases, especially on the LSAT, these premises do not prove the conclusion. So to get good at destroying arguments, you're getting good at identifying what the premises are, what the conclusion is, and why those premises don't prove the conclusion. Okay? So, what if I said to you this? If you win the lottery, then you will get $750 million. If you win the lottery this Saturday, then you will get $750 million. Therefore, if you win the lottery this Saturday, you're going to be happy. Okay? Is that an argument, first of all? What makes it an argument? I have a premise and I have a conclusion. Does the premise prove the conclusion?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, because
It relies on the assumption that $750 million will make you happy.
does anyone want to argue with that?
What do you say?
It relies on the assumption that if you get $750 million, is that what I said? Yeah. Then you will be happy. Does anyone want to disagree with that assumption? Yeah?
Because I thought your question was, if you win the lottery, you will be happy.
Yeah, that was the conclusion, right?
Okay, so if you win $2 off the lottery, then you won't necessarily happy.
If you could get $2.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this said if you win the lottery on Saturday, you're going to get $750 million. Therefore, if you win the lottery on Saturday, you're going to be happy.
Some other things could be going on in the person's lives that would overshadow.
Yeah, certainly. Or maybe getting that money doesn't make you happy. But I think most of us would be happy. Maybe not, actually. I have no idea. But I think I would. So, just like, okay, that sounds like fuck your money. So, we're pretty good right now, right? So, anyways, the point is, though, from a logical standpoint, that conclusion is not proven because we're missing the assumption or the premise that if you win $150 million, then you'll be happy, right? And so no matter how good the argument is, if there is an assumption, that's a problem and you have to get good at identifying it. Another example, just to keep you awake, let's say that Joey got caught selling meth at school. He's in high school, by the way. Therefore, Joey should be suspended for at least a day. How many people agree with that reasoning? No one here agrees with that reasoning. So you're like, keep him in school. Okay? You'd say keep him in school.
Yeah.
Well, what do you-
Everyone else agreed, keep him in school. No one, does anyone agree with that reasoning? Yeah, he should be suspended for at least a day.
No, there's not enough evidence for me. In
He-
other words,
He was caught selling meth at school.
But
You're
for the
like,
question,
look, I
but
mean,
when the question is not enough evidence.
what's the big deal? Is that your
Argument.
So say it again, please.
Okay, so Joey got caught selling meth at school. He was selling meth at school. Therefore, Joey should be suspended for at least a day.
There's the assumption.
But there's an assumption.
Okay, there's the assumption. Okay, are you disagreeing with that assumption?
What is that?
I mean, are you saying it's okay?
I'm not. I mean.
Okay. Anyway, you guys, your reaction is so muted. It's like,
Is there like, is it because there's no premise of like you sell meth, therefore you're suspended for at least a day?
do you think the argument's good or bad?
It's a bad argument.
Bad.
It's a bad
Why is it
argument.
bad?
Because I think there's like, I don't understand the connection between selling meth
Yeah,
and
something-
You don't understand the connection between selling meth and being suspended? You mean if someone said this to you, you'd be like, but math, he's got to go to math class. You're not going to be concerned. You're not going to be like, you're going to be shocked. You're going to be like, I just don't understand the school system. What the hell do they think they're doing? Okay, so I think we all, on some level, accept the assumption that if someone is caught selling meth at school, and by the way, on the LSAT, you have to accept premises as true. So if some of you were thinking like, wait, I don't think he was selling meth at school. He was caught selling meth at school. You have to accept that as true. If you accept that as true, I think most of us would agree, yeah, he probably should be suspended for at least a day. That seems like a reasonable, like maybe more than reasonable punishment, right? But because the evidence did not say, selling meth at school merits at least a day's worth of suspension, that's an assumption and the argument is not perfect, and your job is to spot that and say, okay, yeah, but just because he was caught selling meth at school doesn't necessarily mean that he should be suspended. This is actually, this example might seem silly, but this is why so many people hate attorneys. Right? Because you get in trouble and someone hires an attorney and they start making these kinds of arguments like, yeah, I understand that they took the money from the company and you're very sad about that and you lost all your business, but There's nothing here that says you can't take the money out and then put it back in a few months later. Right? There's nothing in this agreement. You're like, well, I think that's just common practice now. Well, it doesn't say anything here, and you're so mad at that person, and the judge is like, yeah, well, it doesn't say anything like that in the agreement. You know, that's your job. It starts here on the LSAT. Your job is to find assumptions and exploit them. Okay? And you guys are already right on the right path. I mean, I tell you this about suspension, and you're all just like, yep, yeah. You know? Okay, anyways, bottom line is you got to get good at reading sentence by sentence. You got to get good at making inferences. And finally, you got to get good at destroying arguments, which means separating the premises from the conclusion, figuring out why that conclusion is not necessarily true, even if it's likely to be true. If it's not proven, that's a bad argument, and your job is to say why. Okay. If you do that, all this other stuff will fall into place for the vast majority of the time.